The ship hovered silently over the barren surface of the asteroid. Its matte grey exterior blended into the void. Below it, lifeless rock stretched into eternity. This was just another nameless piece of debris orbiting a forgotten star in a forgotten system. To the miners on board, it was a job. To others, it would soon be something far more significant. Jarek wiped the sweat off his brow as he powered up the controls. The vibrations of the mining drill hummed gently through the floor. He looked at his partner, Marin, who stood on the opposite console. They were grizzled veterans of the Deep Belt Mining Corp. Each had drilled through hundreds of asteroids. It was routine. It was dull. The corporation paid for extracted resources and efficiency. So they did their jobs. This time, the drill was larger, heavier, a prototype given to their team to test in deep space conditions. Management had said this thing would change the industry. It looked like an oversized gun mounted on a platform. Massive rotary blades encircled its tip, driven by plasma bursts. Jarek shook his head. Management always hyped up their tech. It was their job to sell dreams. The miners just got the rocks. Jarek adjusted his headset. Readouts green. Begin drilling. The machine roared to life. Its blades rotated faster and faster until they became a blur. Plasma streaks flashed against the rocky surface. Molten fragments spewed into the air like volcanic ash. The asteroid groaned under the force. Marin nodded silently. Her expression, carved by years of hard labor, showed nothing but focus. They had drilled asteroids large and small. This was no different. 2 hours passed. The asteroid's surface now had a cavernous hole that plunged into its depths. Jarek yawned and checked the energy output. The drill ate up energy faster than expected. Its heat signature spiked. Marin frowned but said nothing. Even prototypes had their quirks. They let it run. Somewhere deep inside the rock, the drill hit something. The feedback loop spiked across the controls. Warnings flashed on every screen. Jarek slammed the override button. Emergency shut down. The drill whined like a wounded beast and stilled. Silence settled around the cabin. Marin gripped the edge of the console. Her knuckles turned white. Both stared at the data scrolling across their monitors. Something had stopped the drill. Something metallic, something unnatural. Marin's voice cut through the stillness. We hit a wreck. Jarek shook his head. His instincts kicked in. He had dug through enough rocks to know when they hit metal. This wasn't scrap. It was cleaner, structured, too refined for debris. He glanced at the depth scans. Whatever they hit was massive. We should send a probe, Marin said. Her voice had a sharp edge now. Jarek agreed. He launched the drone into the gaping hole. Its tiny thrusters sputtered as it vanished into the darkness. The screens flickered with its feed. For a few tense moments, nothing happened. Then the image stabilized. A structure loomed before them. It was an enormous chamber buried inside the asteroid. Smooth walls lined with glowing veins of light pulsed rhythmically. Strange symbols run along their surface. The probe's camera turned slowly and revealed a giant metallic artifact. It resembled a spire with jagged arms extending in every direction. A soft glow emanated from its core. Jarek's blood ran cold. Marin exhaled. That's no wreck. Jarek's mind raced. They were miners, not archaeologists, not scientists. They had no business finding anything like this. He reached for his comms. Control. This is Drill Team Delta. We've encountered an unidentified structure buried in asteroid 249. Request immediate response. Static hissed on the line. The reply came a moment later. Copy Delta. Stand by. Dispatching a specialist team. Hold position. They held position. That was the order. But Jarek's nerves buzzed. He stared at the feed. The metallic spire sat motionless inside its dark vault. Its pulsing light seemed to throb in time with his heartbeat. Minutes turned into hours. He shifted uneasily. Marin was pacing. Something about the spire put them both on edge. What is that thing? She muttered. Jarek had no answer. He kept his eyes locked on the feed. Then the light began to change. It pulsed faster, brighter, the entire cavern seemed to shift. Vibrations hummed through the rock. The drill cabin rattled. Jarek's gut twisted. He grabbed the controls. "Marin, we need to get out of here." Before she could respond, the asteroid split open. The entire surface cracked like brittle glass. Tremors shook the ship. Alarms screamed across the console. Jarek grabbed his harness and braced. Holden. The asteroid shattered. Fragments hurled into space like shrapnel. A massive shockwave blasted outwards. The ship's shields flared bright as they absorbed the force. When the dust cleared, the spire hung in open space. Free, exposed. Its metallic arms glowed brighter than a sun. Jarek stared in awe. The spire was awake. It was alive. Marin's voice shook. "What did we just do?" "Heck, can't answer." He could barely think. Then the sensors lit up again. Energy readings spiked to impossible levels. Jarek's hands flew across the console. "We need to move. That thing's charging something." The ship groaned as Jarek yanked it into motion. The spire emitted a beam of light, so powerful it cut through the void. Jarek watched in horror as it lanced toward a nearby planet. He pulled up scans. It was uninhabited. Still, the beam struck its surface. A flash brighter than any explosion erupted. The planet crumbled. It shattered into dust and fire. A world erased in seconds. Marin's voice broke the silence. Did that just kill a planet?" Jarek nodded slowly. His mouth felt dry. The spire's glow dimmed slightly, but its energy still surged. It was waiting, gathering, recharging. Control's voice crackled in. "Delta, report status. What the hell just happened?" Jarek answered quickly. "Control, the object is active. It destroyed a planet. It's recharging. Orders." Control went silent for a long time. Then came the reply. "Evacuate the sector. A fleet is inbound. Repeat. Get clear immediately." Jarek felt a chill crawl down his spine. If Control was sending a fleet, they knew how bad this was. He pushed the engines to full throttle. The ship shot away from the asteroid's remnants. Marin watched the spire on the rear feed. It hung in space like an ancient god. Waiting, watching. Hours passed as they fled. Control's fleet arrived in force. Battleships and cruisers surrounded the spire. Jarek tuned into their comms. Voices filled the airwaves. Orders shouted. Weapons charged. The fleet opened fire. Lasers, missiles, plasma cannons. Everything they had struck the spire's surface. It did nothing. The spire's glow intensified again. Energy rippled across its form. Jarek watched in horror as it released another beam. It tore through a battleship like paper. The vessel exploded in a brilliant flash. Another beam struck a cruiser. Debris scattered into space. The fleet began to retreat. Ships scrambled to escape. Jarek gripped his console. They can't stop it. Marin's face was pale. "We woke it up, and now it's killing everything." They drifted into silence. The spire loomed in the distance. It moved now, slowly, purposefully. It had a destination. Jarek realized what it was. The nearest inhabited system. Billions of lives. He turned to Marin. "We can't let it reach them." Marin nodded slowly. "How do we stop it?" Jarek swallowed hard. He thought about the drill. The prototype. It had broken into the spire's cavern. Maybe it could do more. Maybe it could punch through the spire's defenses. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. "We're taking the drill to the spire." Marin didn't argue. Together, they turned the ship around. The fleet's remnants were still fleeing. Nobody noticed the tiny mining ship moving toward the monster. Jarek aimed for the spire's glowing core. He gripped the controls and activated the drill. "Hold steady." Federal roared to life. Its plasma blades spun faster than ever before. Energy crackled across its tip. The ship shook violently as Jarek piloted toward the core. The spire's glow grew brighter. It sensed them. It released a defensive beam. Jarek twisted the ship just in time. The beam scraped their hull. Systems screamed in protest. "We're out of time," Marin shouted. Jarek pushed the engines to their limit. The drill's blades pierced the spire's surface. Sparks erupted as metal gave way. The ship jolted. Jarek kept it steady. The drill punched deeper. Into the core, energy surged across the spire. It screamed, a sound that rattled their bones. The glow intensified to blinding levels. Jarek closed his eyes. The last thing he heard was the drill's roar. When he opened his eyes, it was silent. The spire was gone. Fragments of its remains drifted in space. The mining ship floated among them. Systems flickered weakly. Marin sat beside him, breathing heavily. Jarek exhaled. It was just a mining drill. Marin managed a faint smile. "And we just saved billions." Jarek stared at the void where the spire had been. He knew it wasn't over. They had found something ancient, something powerful. It would not be the last. But for now, the stars were quiet once more. The comms crackled softly. Control's voice broke the stillness. "Delta, confirm status. Is the threat neutralized?" Jarek nodded slowly. "Control. The spire is destroyed. We're alive, for now." The line remained silent for a moment before Control responded. "Understood. Return to base. Good work out there." Jarek let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He looked at Marin and smiled faintly. The ship's engines flared as they turned toward home. The stars stretched before them. Endless, unknown, waiting. It was just a mining drill. But it had been enough.